Welcome to week 5 of Bible Studies for Life. Today we take a little break. We've been talking about the Holy Spirit week after week, and this week in our lesson we have a kind of a break for July 4th weekend. So we talk about freedom and liberty, but from a Christian standpoint. A passage here, 1 Corinthians chapter 10 is a great passage. Lots of other places where you can find this discussion that comes up in 1 Corinthians 8. You may want to read through that, and Romans 10 you may look at. But our focus is on 1 Corinthians 10. Before we dive in, be sure and subscribe, like, share, comment, ask questions, all of that. Maybe we have a discussion about liberty and holiness this week. Anyway, let's dive into 1 Corinthians 10. It says, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible, but not everything builds up. No one is to seek his own good, but the good of the other person. Okay, these great statements of liberty. You're in, as a Christian, you are free. The laws of the old covenant, the dietary laws and all of those things don't hold anymore. And specifically, we'll talk about dietary laws because that's what kind of where we go with this. But you can do whatever you want to do. He says everything is permissible, but not everything helps. Not everything's beneficial, and everything's permissible, but not everything builds up, which refers not just to building yourself up, but building others up. Not everything helps me, but not everything helps anybody else either. So for Paul, as he begins this discussion about liberty, he's talking about community as well. And you can't divorce community from liberty. You can't divorce liberty from community. We live together. We live in an area. We live with people, and we seek to build fellowship and grow community with others. And so we have to think about those things in relationship to liberty. Okay? So that's why he says no one is to seek his own good, but the good of the other person. Suddenly now the discussion is not what can I do, but the discussion, maybe the question is, what should I do? Not what can I do, but what should I do? What's helpful? What's not helpful? Okay, so then he gets into specifics. Eat everything that is sold in the meat market without raising questions for the sake of conscience, since the earth is the Lord's and all that is in it. If any of the unbelievers invite you over and want you to go, eat everything that is set before you without raising questions for the sake of conscience. Okay, so one of the issues that was taking place in Corinth, you have a large temple, and animals are sacrificed at the temple to the Greek gods, and then they take those animals across the street, literally across the Lycaean Way, to the meat market where the meat is butchered and then sold. And this is the way they'd been doing business forever. And then here you have these Christians who come in and they're like, well, yeah, but that meat's been offered to idols, so we shouldn't eat it because we're supporting the temple. You know, we're supporting a pagan worship by buying it from there. And we're basically kind of watering down our own gospel and our belief in truth, right? That's an argument that's made. Okay, do you see the point? I think we can see the point of that. But Paul says, look, just because it was offered to idols doesn't mean the meat itself is unclean. So he says, you eat everything that's sold. You don't raise questions for the sake of conscience, because all of it's the Lord. That animal was the Lord's before it was the pagan gods. Okay? It was his in the very beginning. He's the one who created it. It's his. So it's his. But he says, if any of these unbelievers invite you over and you want to go, well, just eat whatever they set before you. If somebody invites you to their home and they offer you food, you don't make bones about, well, now, where did you buy this? And was it sold to to support the work of a pagan temple, that kind of thing, right? You go without raising questions for the sake of conscience. You set your conscience aside for the community, for the opportunity to have a meal with somebody, especially to have a meal with somebody who's not a believer. They're not going to hold to the same convictions, and they may be turned off from the gospel, not because of the gospel, because of your conviction about food, which Paul says, hey, it's the Lord's, okay? But now here's the other situation. If someone says to you, this is food from a sacrifice, do not eat it out of consideration for the one who told you, for the sake of conscience. I don't mean your own conscience, but the other person's. For why is my freedom judged by another person's conscience? If I partake with thanksgiving, why am I criticized because of something for which I give thanks? So Paul is here not saying that it's a sin to eat the food because of the nature of the food. I think what he's saying is it's the sin occurs in how you deal with the people that you're with, and how and the judgmental or non-judgmental, or the way you hurt their conscience purposely, not unknowingly. But here, if somebody says, that food comes from a sacrifice, well, then you don't eat it because it's going to offend them. They might be offended by it. Okay. I don't mean your own conscience, but the other person's, to look out for them. In chapter 8, he talks about stronger and weaker, and we can have a discussion about who's the stronger and who's the weaker, the one that does eat the meat offered to idols or the one who doesn't. That's a good discussion to have, right? For why is my freedom judged by another person's conscience? Why should I not do it because of somebody else's? Well, if I partake with thanksgiving, why am I criticized? There's no reason to be criticized. It's not me. I'm not it, but it is for that other person. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. So here now we've changed our motif. Instead of talking about the relationship between you and the other person, now we're talking about the relationship between you and God's kingdom and the glory that comes to His kingdom and His purposes worldwide, and in relationship to that other person. What is God trying to accomplish in their life? And so now my concern is not just for my relationship with them, but my concern is for their relationship with the Lord, and how I might affect positively or negatively their relationship with the Lord. It says, give no offense to Jews or Greeks or the church of God, just as I also try to please everyone and everything, not seeking my own benefit, but the benefit of many, so that they may be saved. Okay. So he says, you don't offend people just to offend people. Right? To the Jews or the Greeks, these are the lost, or to the church of God, to the believers. Well, man, it's a tough thing if I have to look out for everybody else and think about everybody else's walk as well as my own. But this is a Christian life. And you don't just live as an island. You don't just live all on your own. You live in community. And so you think about community and you take into account other people. Right? It says Paul tries to please everyone and everything. Now, when he says this, we know that he's a straight shooter, right? He's going to preach the gospel. He's not going to water it down. He is going to share the truth of the gospel no matter where he is and in what circumstance. But in doing so, he recognizes that sometimes the gospel is offensive. But Paul doesn't want to be offensive. Does that make sense? It's possible, isn't it, for the gospel to offend? But for me to not just offend for kicks, that I don't just act in an offensive way. In doing so, the gospel never gets the opportunity to offend, because I've offended them before the truth of the gospel has. And maybe that offense of the gospel is what brings them to faith, right? It says, I don't seek my own benefit, but the benefit of many, so that they may be saved. Paul says, this is not just my walk with them and my relationship with them, but it is my concern for their relationship with the Lord, that they might be saved. This is where this liberty, okay, I have liberty. You can do it. It's okay. It's not a sin, but does it help? Is it beneficial? And how does it affect other people in their walk? What happens when the Christian exerts his liberty and let's say that he asserts his liberty, but in doing so, he is purposely, not unknowingly, okay, but purposely doing so in a way that offends other people? Well, at that point, I have exerted my rights, but I have lost the war for that person potentially. That so that I don't want to push somebody away. As much as I want to live free, I don't want to live offensively. So this is a great challenge, okay? It's a great challenge, and a couple of questions for you to think about, and I think you can have some great discussion about this, because there is a lot there, and I'd encourage you to read 1 Corinthians 8 as well. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for teaching, for giving your time to help others know the Lord. Thank you for doing that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Be sure and like, comment, ask your questions. We'll have our discussion online, and share it with others. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.